You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, episode 72, with Dr. Roshawnna Novellus.
You're listening to the Trailblazers Podcast, where we will explore the stories of successful Black professionals. Join us as we highlight the knowledge, resources, and tools of these accomplished trailblazers to help provide the know-how, confidence, and motivation you need to blaze your trail. And now, here's your host, Stephen Hart.
Hello and welcome, Blazer Nation, to this episode of the Trailblazers Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Hart. Our featured guest today is Dr. Roshawnna Novellus. She's co-founder of Bootstrap Capital. She's a host of the Startup Funding Podcast. She recently created the Enrich Her Business Conference. She's an author, an angel investor, and so much more. And as I soon learned in this conversation, she's truly a passionate professional who's focused on helping business owners and entrepreneurs, especially women. And she's helping them to position themselves to win and to be able to attract funding. And so in today's conversation, we talked a little bit about what's driving her today. We chatted about her book and the mindset around finances and budgeting. We spoke about how she gets past the fear of being able to start all these new initiatives and business ventures. And we talked about her podcast and then this new business conference that she's developed and the mission behind these new platforms and how they all tie in to her overall mission and purpose. And so, before we get into my conversation with Dr. Novellus, I wanted to share a personal story with you. So the week that this call was being recorded was a week that my wife was away for work. And given that the episode was scheduled to be recorded at 9 p.m., certain that this super dad would be able to get both kids down before the call. And my daughter had just finished soccer practice and she went down, no problem. But the little man fought me tooth and nail, and, I had to literally beg him about 5 minutes before the call was to be recorded to start. I begged him to just go to sleep and just stay in bed. I ran down, I hopped into the interview, but I was convinced the entire time that I was talking that I'd have two little feet walk into the room and come up alongside me and join this conversation. And so I apologize for sounding flustered in parts of the call. I also felt like I pushed the pace of the call for this reason too. Luckily, Dr. Novellus was a pro. She did an amazing job of sharing her wisdom and just providing inspiration throughout this call. So without further delay, let's go ahead and jump in and get set to receive today's mission fuel from our featured trailblazer, Dr. Roshawnna Novellus. Enjoy. Dr. Novellus, welcome and thank you for being our guest on today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So listen, you're a young trailblazer and you've got so much happening, so much ties back to the world of finance. I heard, or read somewhere in reading up on you that your mom actually began bringing you to investment clubs when you were like 12 years old. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, she did. She told me that all women need to know how to manage money. And my mother was a teacher, and she started taking me with her to her investment club meetings at her school. And so by the time I was 18, I knew how to manage a portfolio. And by the time I had my first job, I was going to all of the closings of my coworkers when they were purchasing their first home.
Right.
So I felt really confident in that whole journey from an early age, and that really helped me a lot.
So you've got 3 degrees.
4. Yes.
So I was actually on your LinkedIn taking a peek at your profile, right? And I saw you've got a wide span of focus areas, right? You have a BA in computer engineering and economics. You did IT for your master's and your doctorate in systems engineering and finance. What was I missing?
No, that's everything. That's
Right.
everything. That's 4. It kind of sounds like 5, but it's actually 4 different degrees.
Right.
I've always loved both the engineering and the finance side, but what most people don't realize is they're both just math. So math was always my
Your
favorite
core.
subject, and you're just applying math to solve different kinds of problems.
So bring me back, right? Was it mom, was it your parents that instilled the importance of education at an early age?
I've always known that education was important, and I was just a little competitive as a child. So in third grade, we had those competitions on who could solve the most multiplication problems in a minute, and I always wanted to win.
Nice.
So, so that just started off the whole journey, and I just loved it so much. I took extra math classes from an early age. I loved calculus. I loved multivariate analysis. Math makes me feel like the world makes sense. So it's always been my favorite subject.
That makes a lot of sense to me because I'm looking at, the competitive nature probably led to you having the need to keep it going, right? And have so many different engines going. You're podcasting, you're speaking, you're running your own business, nonprofit, authoring books, and so much more. And I'm like, wow, this girl is on fire. We'll go into depth a little bit on some of your initiatives here in a minute, but again, clearly you're on a mission, right? What is driving you today?
I really want to help as many entrepreneurs as I can actualize their dreams. And a lot of people don't have access to networks, education, or just people in the know. And luckily, because I'm so driven and because I'm kind of courageous, I have been lucky enough to meet all these people that make things happen. But I have realized that a lot of other people don't know how to do it. So it's my mission to help be the catalyst to help entrepreneurs be successful. So that's what drives me. That's what kind of mark I want to leave in the world.
So you have the drive and the ambition and the smarts. What would you say is your greatest superpower in all of that?
Well, so my flair is my smile. So whenever I get nervous, I just start smiling. Then people usually will talk to me. So that is my superpower, to know when to just smile to get what I want.
Love it.
Yeah.
So what fueled the author in you, right? You wrote a book, Budgeting is More Liberation Than Limitation, right? And you talk about mindset when dealing with finances, right? What fueled some of that?
Well, a lot of people think about the word budgeting as if it's a bad word. They're like, no, scary budget. That means I can't do whatever I want. But actually, if people make decisions in alignment with their goals and expectations, they actually live a freer life. So one of my close friends, after she finished her MBA, she was like, I don't want any of this school loan debt. Like, I need to squash it immediately. So she decided to take a non-traditional path and join the Navy because they were paying off student loans and 4 years of service. And she said, after that, I can travel the world. I can live in Hawaii and the beach. I can do whatever I want and not feel the need to only work in high-paying jobs.
Right.
So a lot of people won't have that conversation with themselves to figure out what kind of life do I want? Is it worth it? And make decisions based on that. So the goal of the book is just to help people say, hey, it's my choice to figure out what I want to do, what's important, and make financial decisions based on that.
I've said this before on the podcast, but I feel especially within the Black culture, right? We've got this mindset to show our net worth. And, there's a desire to show the bling and the biggest house and the nicest cars and the name brand, everything, right? What's the advice you'd give to our listeners about money and about that mindset, right? Because I feel like you probably share the same mindset, right? It's not like you're saying you can't have anything, right?
Right.
But it's a moderation play and it's playing the long game.
Right. And it's what makes you happiest. Are you happier with a $4,000 purse? Are you happier going to Thailand for 6 weeks? Because they cost the same. So what do you want to do? And a lot of people don't think about, like you said, the long-term gain, what makes them feel the most fulfilled. Because a lot of times when we just buy things that are expensive, we don't even care. Like, we just want to buy something else. We'll put that in our closet or wherever and forget we even have it, right?
A lot of times it's just to impress the Joneses, right?
Doesn't like us from the beginning, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And that's sad, I mean, I just feel a sense of frustration sometimes looking at, other friends, right? Who I know it's impossible for friends of mine to be saving for their retirement. I'm in a phase of life right now where, I just turned 40. My wife and I are both crushing it work-wise. We're saving aggressively as much as we can, but we're dropping a couple grand in daycare every month, right? And so, we know people in our same timeline in life with kids can't possibly be doing more than X, right? Yet, it's like people are saying, all right, let's put off saving for retirement for another day. And it worries me that, people aren't adequately saving and would rather buy that bigger home or, just spend without thinking of that, long-term play. And
yeah, I know a lot about people's finances. A lot of people pretty much tell me everything. So I remember one client was making about $500,000 a year and owed maybe, let's say, $10,000 in taxes and couldn't write the check. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I had to do a payment plan. And I'm like, you don't have that much and you make $500,000 a year? Like, what's going on? What are you doing with all your money?
It's crazy
So, and the mindset can be if you're making $500,000 or making 30,000, it just, are you living below your means? Do you know what your goals are? And are you thinking long term? And it, like I said, and like you said, it doesn't mean you can't have nice things. Like I, for whatever reason, love Range Rovers, right? I just love them. And I said, one day I'll have one, but I have to put down 50%. And I have to reach all these other financial goals first. And I finally reached those financial goals and I saved up half to put down, even though a lot of people don't believe in putting money down on cars, but I don't believe in having a car payment that's over $400. So the only way to get a Range Rover with a car note that's in the $300 range is to put a lot down. And I was able to do that. So I have this nice vehicle, but I did it in alignment with my own principles of finance and saving and waiting and all of that. Yeah.
Well, congrats to you on your Range Rover. So in December, you added podcaster to the many list of titles that you have, and you launched your podcast, Startup Funding, and congrats to you on that. And Startup Funding, for those listening, is Dr. Novellus is helping business owners get ready to attract funding, right? What fueled that desire to start a podcast?
Well, for years, I was going to angel investor meetings and talking to entrepreneurs about what they need to do to receive investor capital. And I realized most people don't know anything about how this space works. And the traditional education environment doesn't teach entrepreneurs how to attract funding. So in this period of time, I befriended a lot of VCs and people who run funds, and I met a lot of entrepreneurs who had seed rounds and Series A rounds. So I said, well, why don't I share their advice with the world? So that was my inspiration.
So you're talking to them on the podcast. You're bringing on the venture capitalists, the angel investors, and having them share their wisdom and knowledge.
Right. So one of my favorite episodes, one of my friends, he pitched his company over 700 times.
Wow.
Before he was able to raise the $1.5 million he needed to fund the seed round of his company. And every time I say that number, it's like,
oh my gosh, 700 times.
Yeah. And I was like, how could you stand that much rejection? But he said he knew his idea was worth it. And he later sold his company for multiples of millions of dollars. And he was very successful. But he went through this grueling rejection cycle because he believed in his idea, right? So a lot of people feel that if the first investor you speak to says no, that's it. And so I wanted to share stories like that to my audience.
Wow. You have me ready to hit subscribe here. Check this out. So, this is great. I encourage those of you who are looking to have a startup, right, and attract funding, you absolutely want to go ahead and subscribe to Startup Funding. I feel like you have so many things that are happening and you keep pushing the envelope, right? I feel like I'm 70-something episodes into this podcast right now. I'm just getting to the point where things are starting to sink. I'm feeling comfortable. I'm getting in a flow, right? And before then, I just always had something stressing me, be it kids or, the podcast with audio and getting that right and all this. How do you get past the fear of starting something new and allowing yourself to get to the point where everything begins to flow?
It's just courage. And I think I like starting new projects. I'm one of those people who it's more difficult to keep having the same projects on the plate. So I
Right.
love like taking on new challenges and new tasks because I just think that there's so much opportunity out there. It's easy for me to start new things.
I know, things don't always go the way you have them planned, right? You're running
Most of the time.
Novellus Financial. You've started a nonprofit, and you've done so many different initiatives and projects, right? Share with me a time where things didn't go the way you had planned. You hit a roadblock. You had a clear roadblock. Talk to me about that and tell me, what happened and how you kind of overcame that.
Well, I'll talk about when I transferred from full-time corporate world to full-time entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone told me, hey, make sure you have a contract in place before you quit your job so you have that revenue coming in the door. So I had this contract in place with my prior company. They said, all you have to do is quit and you have this year contract. I negotiate the rate, everything was signed. But there was a caveat in my contract that it was only in force as long as they couldn't find anyone else who could do the job that I was doing. And I didn't really realize that. So I quit the job.
They found
2
someone else.
weeks into being an entrepreneur, they said, oh, we just hired someone new. Thanks. And I'm like, wait, what?
Wow.
So it was really hard because I had it all planned out for this first year. There's no
Right.
change in my income. It'll be great. And I'm working half the time and all of this. So it's perfect. I'll have some ramp up time. But at that point, I had to adjust quickly, create a
Yes.
new plan, and figure out what I was going to do. So it taught me a lot about the balance between planning and the balance between being flexible with what life brings you. So I do believe that we always have to have a plan,
Mhm.
but we can't get too attached to a plan that falls apart at the same time because it's a waste of time to do that. You just have to make something happen and push forward.
Humans plan and God laughs.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's crazy. Did some of that fuel your mindset to always diversify and have, many different things happening? I mean, you have Novellus Financial and you have all these other things that you're tipping your toe into, right?
Yeah, diversification is important, but it's also important to make sure everything that you do is in alignment with
Mm-hmm.
each other. So I realized last year I was doing too much. So everything that I'm doing now has the same focus to help entrepreneurs be successful. So whether it's a podcast or my Enricher series, everything has the same goal. And that makes it much easier for me to carry out my task. So be careful not to overcommit. I did have to let go of some of my board positions because I was wearing myself too thin, and that doesn't make anybody happy. So
Exactly.
there is a range of what one person can do, and it's very important to listen to that.
I'm right there with you. And I've had to do similar recently. Trying to be the Jamaican I am and have 3 and 4 different things happening all at once was not the smartest. So, most recently you started, and you just touched on Enrich Her business conference, right? This was the first one that happened in April.
Yes, it was the first one, and the goal was to expose women-led businesses to education on access to capital, networking, and resources. And it was fantastic. We
Wow.
had several awesome speakers and over 250 people
Wow.
participated, and it was just fantastic. So I'm really excited, and several people from different cities have contacted me about rolling out Enricher to their city. So I'm planning that out now, and I look forward to what happens next.
So how are you connecting the dots and all this? I mean, I can understand where startup funding and Enrich Her, would connect, but it all comes back to you wanting to help entrepreneurs and young business owners, right?
Right. So even on the podcast, so I picked the top 30 entrepreneurs to showcase on the podcast. So actually, I release a podcast every single day during Women's History Month in
Wow.
March,
Wow.
featuring one of these awesome entrepreneurs. And when they emailed me and told me, "Hey, I got this many clients from being on your show, or this much in new business," it made me feel like I was doing something to help them.
Hmm.
So everything really worked together.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, that is the goal. That is a point. If I can see those kind of metrics happening from what I'm doing, then I know I'm on the right path.
Listen, what are your goals for Enrich Her going forward, right? I know you mentioned,
Well, yes.
potentially growing it into different cities. I'm excited for you right now. I mean, this is, listen, everyone listening, you need to listen to this young lady and mark this episode because I'm excited to hear where you're going to be in like 5 or 10 years from now.
Right. So because of the feedback, I'm like, let's make this even bigger.
Mm,
So I just created a framework for a regulation crowdfunding portal to help
wow.
fund women-led businesses. And I submitted my idea to several pitch competitions, and I have my first one to present this idea actually this week. And so people love this idea. So I'm constantly having these ideas on how to push the envelope further to help more and more people.
Hmm.
So we'll see, like you said, in the next 5 to 10 years, what happens. But my goal is to help as many people as possible. So it's one thing to help them with connections and education, but the real objective is to help them with access to capital.
Great.
So I'm hoping
Which is
that
huge
if
for
I
women,
can,
right? I mean,
yeah.
the statistics on especially black women, but women in general,
Yeah,
women entrepreneurs don't get nearly the amount of funding that
right.
male run startups actually receive.
Right.
And the numbers are startling.
Yeah, less than 8% of venture-backed companies have one woman on the founding team. Not all women, just one.
Hmm.
And then the number drops to 1% when you're looking at women of color. So
Wow.
there you have it.
That's just crazy. So, you're trying to do your part in that to help them. What do you think is the biggest barrier to them receiving funding? Is it a lack of knowledge?
Investors invest in people who they know and trust. Everyone does that. They hang out with people they
So it's
know
a
and
lack
trust.
of a
So if
network?
you don't have a lot of similarities or things in common with the investors, they're probably not going to invest in you.
And most of those investors are men,
Right, older
right?
men
Older,
from certain
older white men,
communities.
right? Yeah.
You don't have a lot in common with them, they're not going to invest in you.
Right.
And because of regulations, most people only accept accredited investors because the amount of due diligence and compliance is much easier if you only accept accredited investors versus non-accredited investors. But most people of color or most people do not have a lot of affluent people around them that can write these large checks. So because most people would have the non-accredited investors, they're just kind of eliminated from the scenario completely because the system is set up so that the accredited investor has an easier way to invest in companies. So it's the whole system in place and access and the whole tradition. So there's a lot of issues there, but at the same time, there are a lot of deserving founders of color and women out there. So we have to do something to make it easier for these groups to receive funding.
Right. Listen, I applaud you. I commend you on choosing to wear so many different hats and for this mission and this purpose that's driving you. It's awesome to hear you, push toward that. And I'm excited to see where this carries you. And I thank you for taking the time to, share your journey with our listeners. Before you go, we love to tap into some of the resources of our listener. And I'm curious to know, and I have no idea how you'd find time to still read, but are you a reader? Do you find time to consume new content from books?
I actually love to read, although I read a lot less now than I used
Right.
to. I used to read a book every single day when I was younger.
Wow.
Like I was in this contest, how many books, I could read, and I would like bait my friends to read more books. But now I read a lot of entrepreneurship, inspiration
Right.
kind of books. Like I love Leap of Strength and just a lot of biographies on self-made entrepreneurs.
Mm.
So when I get the time, I try to read a paragraph paragraph, and so I can get inspired
Is
to
there
keep on going.
is there a title you'd want to share with our listeners that they might want to go pick up at the library or a
I
Barnes and
still
Noble?
like Leap of Strength.
Leap of
That's one
Strength.
of the books I look at frequently. And of course, all of the traditional startup books are great, but whatever book keeps you inspired. And then I love reading books about yoga and karma and all of that, because those books are all about mindset and being in the present moment.
Right.
So a lot of times, especially as type A people, we get into this I'll be happy when syndrome. And you could tell from my resume that I keep trying to do new things. So I have that issue where I'm like, I won't be happy until I accomplish this, X more things. And so reading about being mindful and staying in the present moment and karma, like really, really helps me breathe easier and stay on the path without getting caught up in comparing myself to other people or the results and all of that. So
Right.
that's one of my fail-safes.
So, I agree with that. And I think all entrepreneurs face that issue of the shiny object syndrome. What I will carry home, my takeaway from listening to you, is that it's not just every new thing that is drawing you to it without it tying back to your goals and your purpose and your mission, right?
Right.
So I've noticed that everything, all the dots connect back to your higher vision for where you see yourself in the long term. And so, that's awesome. Before we wrap up, our last question, we love to invite our guest to share one action that our trailblazers jumping off this call should put into action this week to help them blaze their trail.
Okay. I encourage every person to think about where they want to be in 10 years and write a full story about their life, right?
Right.
And then figure out the one thing that they can do right now to make that dream a reality.
Love it. Love it. I've actually been doing a little bit of that probably about 2 months ago, where my coach actually had me think out 25 years.
Wow.
As to what basically my end game, like what would be my legacy to our kids, and bring it back from that 25-year vision out to 10-year goals, and then 5-year goals, and then incremental 1-year goals from there. But I love that.
Exactly.
Love that. And for everyone listening, you absolutely need to have that long-term vision on who you envision yourself being, in that long game, and then beginning to work towards hitting those goals. I've been experiencing great success doing just that. I love that you shared that. I really enjoyed this conversation. I could continue talking to you for a good bit more, but I'm grateful again for your time, and thank you so much for being on with us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'll be posting links to all of today's book recommendations and links mentioned on our show notes page at tbpod.com. If today was your first time listening to the Trailblazers podcast, I just want to extend a warm Trailblazers welcome to you. We're so happy to have you here, and we encourage you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. Go ahead and browse through some of our past episodes to keep the knowledge flowing. If you're a fan of the podcast and today's content, and you're maybe already subscribed to the podcast, please continue to share and invite your friends, your family, your colleagues to listen to an episode that you think might impact them most. We believe that someone listening to these inspiring stories will be moved to make significant changes that will have generational impact for many others, both now and well into the future. Don't miss next week's episode. New episodes are released each and every Monday by about 5 a.m. Eastern. Trailblazers, jump off this podcast today. Go find a way to rise above, go way beyond, and keep blazing your trail. Cheers.